Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about the case of child killer Lucy Letby and why this evil woman was able to get away with murdering infants for as long as she did. Lucy Letby's arrest came after a lengthy investigation by the Cheshire Police into a series of unexplained deaths at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital between June 2015 and June 2016. The investigation began as a result of higher than expected number of infant deaths at the hospital during that period. The allegations against Letby included accusations that she administered lethal doses of medication to the babies, leading to their deaths. The police also investigated cases where infants suffered non-fatal collapses whilst under Letby's care. These incidents raised suspicion about her involvement in causing harm to the babies. In November 2020, after 2 years of investigation, Lucy Letby was formally charged with 8 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder. She appeared in court via video link but did not enter any pleas during the hearing. I just want to get right into it. So when I first saw this story pop up on my YouTube recommended list, I saw a picture of an innocent woman carrying a baby with the title saying child killer. I squinted my eyes, tilted my head to the side and thought to myself, child killer? She doesn't even look like she could harm a fly. And that was before I looked into the case. When I read into the case further, watched news reports and documentaries, I was enraged at how many slip-ups that they made. When horrific things like this happen, the first few questions that are typically asked are, how did we get here and how do we ensure something like this never happens again? Now, of course, the case itself isn't about race. However, it would be crazy to neglect the fact that how she looks plays a role in why so many people, including those she worked with, her bosses, and myself, initially refused to believe that she was capable of doing something like this. Even me, who makes videos talking about this stuff all the time, I was conditioned enough to think that these are just false allegations. I even made a video talking about the dangers of white female fragility and highlighting the privileges that come with white women being seen as helpless in society and it being at the expense of black people, specifically black men. And it was in reference to a white woman who was recorded trying to attack a black woman in a Victoria's Secret shop, and once she realised that she was being recorded, she started acting like the victim. And sure enough, it worked, because when the police were called, she was treated like the victim and not the perpetrator. I'm just trying to make sense of what could possess someone to study a 3-year course in nursing, a job that entails you saving lives, not taking them. My theory is that she was aware of her demons earlier on in life, so she decided to do nursing at university so that she could take the lives of those already vulnerable without the extra struggle or the extra mess that could go into murdering someone, so that she could do so and then no one suspect a thing. Very calculated. Again, the case itself is not about race, but we want to assess how this happened, right? And why it took so long to catch her, and to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. So this is where her being white comes into this. Those we typically associate with crime are men, black people, and those who come from impoverished backgrounds. She doesn't fit into any of these groups, and this worked in her favour. Throughout history, white women have been seen as victims, especially to the quote savage and hypersexual ways of black men, whereas that's not the case for black women. In fact, more times than not, whenever black women actually are victims, we're laughed at, dismissed, questioned, and doubted. I've had many conversations with people who said that had this been a black nurse, they would have been all over it, and rightfully so. If this was a black nurse, I would have called for her to be thrown in the prison as well. I love my people, but this doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold them accountable if they do evil stuff. My mom's a nurse. She doesn't work in hospitals anymore, but when she did, I can recall her telling me how much she needed to protect herself and make sure that her back was always covered, because she knew that they were waiting for her to F up just one time. My mum has been here ever since she was 16, so she spent most of her life here. So she speaks English very well. So although she speaks English well, you can tell that she wasn't born here because of her accent. You can still understand her, you're just aware of the fact that she wasn't born here because of her accent. In the UK, we typically tend to assume that those with accents aren't that smart. Of course that's not true, but life's a bitch. So she knew that she needed to work twice as hard because of this. What really aggravates me the most is that when someone was brave enough to call this out, he was silenced and dismissed. Dr. Ravi Jayaram has worked as a consultant paediatrician at the Countess of Chester Hospital, and after having noticed a pattern between the mortality rate and Lucy Letby's presence, he notified the hospital authorities and the police, to which he says he was constantly ignored and even told to apologise to Letby. Dr. Ravi Jairam rushed to help the infant and found that her chest wasn't moving and her breathing tube had been dislodged. He said that Letby was making no effort to help the baby and had not called for assistance, whilst the alarm connected to the child appeared to have been silenced. See, this woman's disgusting, like honestly. Presumably, he relayed this information back to those in charge, but he claims he was told to draw a line under the Lucy issue and told to apologise to her for alleged victimisation. See, although white women face the problems that might come with being a woman and gender and stuff like that, historically white women have always occupied a privileged position over both black men and black women. If this doesn't tell you that white women are protected, I don't know what does. There is clearly a reason to believe that she committed those murders just based on the fact that every time a child died, she was on duty, but they chose to move like Stevie Wonder. I also think that those in charge who chose to sweep this under the rug and threaten Dr. Jairam deserve to be fired as well. They chose to prioritize the reputation of the hospital than the lives of these children, which again is disgusting. If this were a child abuse case so severe that a child ended up dying as a result of the abuse, I'm sure that the social workers assigned to that case would have been fired, or some sort of action would have taken place if they made slip-ups this perilous. I'm sure of this because with the Victoria Klimbay case, one of the social workers was suspended. I recently discovered that she's still allowed to work with children, despite her failures that contributed to the 8-year-old's death. They were saying that the social worker was overworked, she had just got her qualification in social work, and the moment she got her certificate, she started working and was immediately appointed to the Victoria Klimbay case. Again, I understand that. Well, not really, because I'm not a social worker or a healthcare practitioner, so I have no idea how stressful these jobs can actually be. But at the same time, you spent 3 years in university training, preparing yourself to be able to deal with these types of situations. And it's not like the signs were covert. No, they were obvious. With the Victoria Klimbay case, you had doctors, acquaintances, people that took care of Victoria that were able to spot the signs. But they weren't able to? And by they, I mean the social workers. People who have a degree in safeguarding children. In the words of Monique, since you got your degree and you know every fudging thing, why did you ignore the signs? Mind you, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. In the early 1990s, Beverly Allett, also known as the Angel of Death, began working as a nurse at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital. When she was employed as a pediatric nurse at the hospital, during this time she targeted vulnerable children under her care, injecting them with lethal doses of insulin or potassium chloride. Her victims ranged in age from just 7 weeks old to 5 years old. Allett's crimes came to light when 7 children under her care experienced unexplained collapses or sudden deaths. Suspicion fell due to her unusually high number of incidents occurring during her shifts, so the same with Lucy Letby. The hospital launched an investigation which eventually led to Allett's arrest, so basically we haven't learned our lesson from the Beverly Allett case. And you could say that back then things were a lot more corrupt. The technology wasn't as advanced back then to be able to solve these types of cases, but that isn't the case today. Technology is a lot more advanced. We have updated legislations put in place to safeguard children and to push for professionalism. You need a DBS to be able to work with vulnerable people, and it has to be renewed every single year. So how is she able to get away with it for this long and so easily in 2023? Also, notice the pictures that they're using of her. The media outlets are using pictures that positively represent her. No mugshots, just photos of her looking like butter wouldn't melt. I was speaking about this with people at the gym and they said that had she not been white, the pictures used would have been vastly different. I say all of this to say I do feel like how she looks plays a role in why people have overlooked it for as long as they did. She's a white woman who's not from a deprived background. White women have always been deemed as victims in society, never villains. And if they are, it's either ignored, like in this case, or they offer some kind of explanation. Mental health. I hope she never ever gets out. And I saw a news report recently showing us where she'll be imprisoned, and I was disgusted. Her room looked better than most hostels. I had to take it off because I was about to punch something. And you know what the funny thing is? You could see stories involving white nurses killing children, having affairs with their students and false allegations, but it would never be a representation of the entire white female population in ways it would have been had they been black. Anyway guys, let me know what your thoughts on the Lucy Letby case is. My condolences to the parents of the children who lost their lives. Also, do you guys think that if you're working with children and you dismiss safeguarding concerns that result in the death of a child, should they lose their ability to work with children? What do you think? Anyway guys, bye!